Years after the 73-day Doklam standoff between India and China, China's ambassador to India has said that the two countries cannot afford to have another Doklam-like incident. Earlier this month in Wuhan, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Xi Jinping had decided to issue strategic guidance to their militaries to strengthen communication and build trust and understanding. This as part of efforts to avoid a Doklam-like situation in the future.
Stand another Doklam. Let's make joint efforts to enhance mutual trust. Try our best to make some progress on the CDMs to maintain the peace and tranquility along the border area.
China also believes, he said, that 5 C's are essential to promote relations. The ambassador labeled them as communication, cooperation, contacts, coordination and control. The Chinese envoy said Prime Minister Modi's neighborhood first policy, which focuses on improving ties with India's immediate neighbors, is very much similar to China's President Xi's policy. An emphasis on a high-level people-to-people and cultural exchange mechanism to enhance exchanges in the field of movies, sports and tourism was also highlighted. Siddhant Sibal now joining us for more on that from the capital, New Delhi. Siddhant, this wasn't really a press conference, so it seemed Doklam was among the many messages that the Chinese envoy wanted to send out. Siddhant, just checking whether you can hear us. I was just saying that this wasn't a press conference style that the envoy had. So Doklam was among one of the messages that he actually wanted to send out. We seem to have some problems with the communication line with Siddhant Sibal, but this is the Chinese ambassador to India who has spoken about many issues, including Doklam. The ambassador Lu Zhaoyi has said that the two countries cannot afford to have another Doklam-like incident. Earlier this month, Prime Minister Narendra Modi met Chinese President Xi Jinping in Wuhan, and they both decided to issue strategic guidance, as it was called in the understanding, to their militaries to strengthen communication and build trust and understanding as a part of efforts to avoid that Doklam-like situation. We have retrieved that communication line with Siddhant Sibal and can go live to him again. Siddhant, I was just asking you whether this was a message that the Chinese ambassador wanted to give, apart from the others that he gave on Doklam.
Well, it's not usual for the Chinese ambassadors to speak on public events, and it was after many weeks or months that the Chinese ambassador was speaking at a public event when media was allowed, and he was specifically speaking about post-Wuhan, how far India-China relations can go, and the basic point he said that India-China relationship cannot bear another Doklam. The second point he suggested was a trilateral between India, Pakistan and China on the sidelines of the SCO summit. And third, he said that India can sign a treaty of friendship with China, the draft already being given by China 10 years ago. So all in all, it was all about bonhomie, which the Chinese ambassador talked about. But of course, the contentious issues remain, like NSG, and of course Chinese would like India to join One Belt, One Road initiatives. Those issues remain. But today's his tone was largely how the relationship can be enhanced. He talked specifically specifically on people-to-people contact. He said the biggest promoter of Indian movies in the country is the Chinese President Xi Jinping, and of course recalling Dangal, how hit it was, and other movies like Secret Superstar in the country. Remember at the SCO summit when that bilateral happened, one of the key points which came out was that there will be a mechanism, people-to-people contact mechanism, which will be headed by the foreign ministers of both the country, and this will be meeting later this year, other than the defense ministers who will also be meeting. So by and large his focus was on that the issues that are issues of conflict like Doklam can be talked about later, but let's first talk about engagements that can help both the countries, India and China.
Should global tech giants such as Google and Facebook store your personal information at data centers in the US or in your home country? Now, that's a question that's been asked repeatedly by many a government around the world, and more so of late following the Facebook Cambridge Analytica data scandal and alleged Russian meddling in the 2016 US presidential elections. The Indian government had last year set up a high-powered panel to suggest changes to the country's data protection law. According to reports, one of the changes it has proposed in the law is that internet giants such as Google and Facebook should store data belonging to Indians within India. However, this rule is to apply only to sensitive personal information. Reports say the panel is divided over the issue of whether companies should be forced to store data about Indians within India. This is because many Indian companies process personal data of European and American nationals as well. Some sections of the tech industry have argued that data localization may hurt the country's $135 billion software export industry, curtail innovation and economic growth. The government's concerns are valid. The Indian economy is increasingly getting digitized. The government is pushing a Digital India initiative as it tries to meet development goals for 1.3 billion Indians. But in a country which has over 460 million net users and which is one of the world's fastest growing smartphone markets, regulatory measures are at best poor. Data protection rules are still managed by the Indian Information Technology Act of 2000. Therefore, building safeguards against data breaches is of paramount importance to the government. It's also believed that law enforcement agencies, especially counter-terrorism experts, would benefit hugely if data is stored locally in India. Earlier this year, it was revealed that the Facebook data breach had affected over 500,000 Indian users. This was a small percentage of the more than 200 million users that Facebook has in India. Facebook has since taken corrective measures. There have also been concerns over possible election meddling by foreign agencies using technology. But is the answer to the problem more regulation of tech companies or allowing a free flow of data? The panel headed by former Indian Supreme Court Judge B.N. Srikrishna remains divided on the question. Its draft recommendations on the new law on data security would be submitted to the government by the end of this month. But if the latest reports are to be believed, it is working on a robust system of checks and balances to guard the personal data of more than 1 billion Indians from being misused. Ankit Tuteja now joins us live from the WION newsroom. Ankit, so is the panel, since it's divided, is it caught between two stools, so as to speak?
So, Amitabh, it seems to be an interesting move. Like, India is the second largest market when it comes to internet users, after China, of course. So it looks like a good move that the government is planning to make it mandatory for tech titans like Google and Facebook to have their data centers in India. When it comes to data storage, when it comes to data of Indian users, it makes sense to have them locally in India. But what is to note here is that, are we ready to have data centers in India? Because what we lack right now is the absence of legal framework. Even if we have data centers in India, but what if we don't have a proper legal framework to govern or to protect citizens against data crimes and data breaches? And that's what is happening right now. If you look at the legal framework in India, we do not have any particular framework to, to store and process and use the data. There is no mandate for companies to report data breaches right now. So on one hand, it makes sense for data to be stored locally, but on the other hand, it's very important to understand that we don't have any legal framework that can govern the movement and regulation when it comes to data protection.
German carmaker Audi's chief executive Rupert Stadler has been arrested on suspicions of fraud over diesel emission. A spokesperson for the firm's parent company, Volkswagen, has said that the hearing to determine whether he will be remanded is still underway. Audi has been accused of selling at least 210,000 diesel engine cars fitted with cheat software in the US and Europe starting in 2009. The luxury car maker is also being investigated for allegations of fraud and illegal product promotion. Mr. Stadler has been with Volkswagen Audi since 1994 and has held the top managerial post at Audi since 2007, 2 years before the alleged emissions cheating activities. So that's a German car maker Audi's chief executive Rupert Stadler, who's been arrested. He's been arrested on suspicions of fraud over diesel emissions, another scandal to hit the German car maker. A spokesperson for the firm's parent company, Volkswagen, has said the hearing to determine whether he'll be remanded to custody is still underway. Audi has been accused of having sold at least 210,000 diesel engine cars fitted with cheat software in the US and Europe starting in 2009. The luxury car maker is also being investigated for allegations of fraud and illegal product promotion. Mr. Stadler has been with Volkswagen Audi since 1994 and has held the top managerial post at Audi since 2007, 2 years before the alleged emission cheating activities.
De la producción de automóviles premium aquí en México. Y Audi